We just wanted to let you be an example of so many people that are in this room, where trying too hard is an indication that you're not in your vortex, and caring what other people think is an indication that you're not in alignment with who you really are. The whole point that we've been wanting to make all day today is that if you can just shift that one thing, everything shifts with it. But if you don't shift that one thing, then you have an endless life of trying to fix this. Your whole life is spent putting out brush fires, eking forward, and then trying to make things out of nothing. Trying to make things out of nothing when the entire universe is there ready to yield to you the allness that you want. The shift feels big, but it is so simple to do. It's so simple to do. All it requires is letting all the stuff go that you've been hammering and pounding on and trying to get right, and just find something that makes you feel good when you do it and do it, or makes you feel good when you think it and think it. For Esther, for a while, it was her treehouse. Now her treehouse is a real tangible thing. It stands there. But when she thinks of the treehouse often, she goes to the thoughts about it before it was standing there. And she remembers coming on this 40-acre property, and Jerry and Esther were walking around, and a lot of it is big oak trees, and a lot of it is cedar trees, and a lot of it is just a lot of brush. And so they were making their way around it, sort of trying to decide, it's a big piece of property, where do we want a light? And there was one particular place that was sort of a little green pasture, and Jerry had said to Esther, "Ooh, this place feels so good." And so they thought that would be the place that they would start to build their buildings. And one day after the building was built, Jerry said to Esther, "Let's ask Abraham why we built the building here and why this place felt so good." He said, "Was it because there were happy people that lived here before and we could feel them, so we just wanted to put our buildings where they had been?" Because the property looked undeveloped, and it was. And when he asked us that question, we said, "No, you were the happy people you were feeling. You were dreaming into your future. You were sensing what was to be, but you didn't have the ability to know you were looking forward. So you assumed you were looking back. You assumed that there must be something back there that I was picking up on." So when Esther thinks about the treehouse, you would like it if you could see it. It's 3 stories, and there's a switchback. Esther was going to climb a rope ladder, and Jerry talked her out of it and built some switchbacks. He said, "I can see you on the rope ladder. I just can't see you with your computer and your on the ladder." And so they stepped into this ring of trees. There were 6 of them in this particular rather small ring of trees. And Jerry said, "This would be a wonderful place for a treehouse." And Esther had always wanted a treehouse, thought she was too old to care about a treehouse. And now Jerry is dreaming about a treehouse, and as Esther stood there, she could feel the treehouse. And she said, "How far into the trees would it be?" And Jerry would say, "Way up there." And Esther said, "How far?" And Jerry said, "Well, let's go get a ladder and we'll climb up in the tree, and then you can get a look of it from in the tree." And so he got the tallest ladder that he could find. They put it on the top of the car, drove it over with both of them putting their hands on and put the ladder up in the tree. And Esther climbed the ladder, and she thought she was so far up in the tree. Now when she's standing in the treehouse, she looks down to where the top of that ladder was, but it felt so far up. And then they began dreaming about it. Esther said, "What will it be like?" And Jerry said, "What do you want it to be like?" And Esther said, "I want it to be really tall." And Jerry said, "Well, how tall do you want it to be?" And Esther said, "As far up as we can make it." And Jerry said, "Do you want to nail it to the trees?" And Esther said, "No, let's not nail it to any of the trees. Let's make it a free-standing structure." And Jerry said, "Then we'll need some big poles in the ground." And Esther said, "How will we put the poles in the ground?" And Jerry said, "We'll need to get some cranes. We'll need a crane and some really long poles." And so Esther is imagining really long poles, and she's imagining a crane putting the really long poles into the ground. And then she's imagining the poles being, so there were 6 big poles put into the ground, 40 feet tall. And then they built the bottom floor. And then Jerry said, "Now what do you want? And now what do you want? And now what do you want?" So they just dreamed it into being. And it is the dreaming of that treehouse into being that rings Esther's bells, not the actual structure standing there now. She remembers the feeling of something that wasn't there, but she could feel it as if it was. That's what we're talking about. And think what was attached to that, a feeling of whimsy. There was no practical purpose in the whole world for this. This was not an office building. This was not a studio. This was not a place that served any practical purpose. This was not something that Esther and Jerry were doing for any other reason other than it felt really fun to think about it, about a tree house, a playhouse. Are you getting what we're talking about? And so for years, ever since then, that treehouse was erected in 1996 or 1997. That's about the time that they were beginning the process of it. And all of those years, when Esther thinks about the treehouse, you know where she goes? To the dream of the treehouse, to the dream of it when it was pure, when it was clear, when there was no resistance whatsoever around it. Are you getting the idea? And so, what was the purpose of the treehouse? What purpose does the treehouse serve? Can you think of what purpose it might serve?
To light you up.
To dream. To dream. One day, Jerry and Esther were in Asheville, North Carolina, and they were staying in their bus, and there was a family staying in a bus next door. And Jerry, especially Jerry, because he was out where they were, he got talking to them and got to know them and really liked them, and they really liked him. And they came into the bus. They liked to see the bus. The bus was a really beautiful bus. And then they were homeschooling, and he gave them the Sarah books, which are part of this work. It's a fictional story about all these truths, about a giant owl on Thacker's Trail, and about a treehouse. And so he gave the books to the children, and a few months later he got a letter from the family that they were coming through the San Antonio area and they would like to come to see the treehouse. And Esther and Jerry said, yes, we would be happy to meet you. We'll have lunch together and we'll show you our treehouse, and brace yourself because this is a really important thing for you to feel. So the children went up into the treehouse, and the youngest one began to cry because this treehouse did not look like the treehouse in the book. She had dreamed a much better treehouse. And it is an awesome treehouse, but she had dreamed the treehouse in the book. She had seen herself flying on the ropes. Esther and Jerry looked at each other. They said, never again will we invite someone to the treehouse without explaining that it's not the treehouse in their dreams. It's not the treehouse in the book. In other words, the reality didn't come close to lighting up their hearts. Their dream was so much bigger. And so, we could talk on and on and on about the value of dreams and what it brings later, but the point of all of these stories is because we want you to at least be willing to acknowledge that there's happiness for you to have that is not attached to the real treehouse. There's happiness for you to have that's not attached to the real anything. And if you will believe that that happiness is there and reach for it from the power of what you've built into the vortex, which from your point of view is actually an unaccomplished dream for the most part, if you will allow yourself to let that come alive and let it come alive for the purpose of thrilling you, not for any other motive, and you will find yourself thrilled again and again and again with what you have been willing to dream about. What will happen to you for sure is that you will begin to align with the vibration of your inner being, who knows about all possibilities, who knows about nothing being off limits to you. And in that continual alignment, like our friend who was in Cancun, who tasted the energy of our rampages for a while and then allowed things to happen to them that had not happened before. If you will take the pleasure from your dreams that is available to you today, your daydreaming, we're talking about your daydreaming, we're talking about your willingness to just be playful and lighthearted in your mind. What will happen to you is that you will access this energy of your inner being, who knows for sure where you stand vibrationally in relationship to everything you want, and a sequence of ideas will then begin to flow to you that will lead you to the culmination of all things wanted. So if we were standing in your physical shoes and we were leaving this gathering and we were coming into conversation with people who haven't been here with you, who are wanting to know where you've been and what it was like, we'd say, it's hard to explain. A lot of it I really didn't understand. A whole lot of it I could have done without, but I've decided I'm going to be nicer to myself, and I've decided I'm going to have more fun, and I've decided I'm going to think happier thoughts, and I'm going to decide that I'm going to look around for things that are surefire subjects for me to feel good about, and I'm going to concentrate as close to 100% on those things as I can. And your friend who wasn't here is going to say to you, isn't that unrealistic? And you would say, yes, but I've decided to leave reality and realism somewhere else because it's been tripping me up. I've decided to be right now, today and tomorrow, as long as I can keep it going, the one who dreams for the sake of feeling good rather than the realist who is facing reality for the sake of explanation or for the sake of attention or for the sake of justification. That's what I got from it. And they're going to say, it doesn't sound like you got much. Seems like sort of a small idea or maybe even an obvious idea. And then you might say, I thought that too at first, but the presenter of the seminar seemed so determined to make the point that there's power in that I've decided to give it a go. I've decided that I'm going to accept that life so far has caused me to ask for a lot, and I've decided to begin right now letting more of it in. And your friend, if you've kept their interest, by now they've probably gone home and texted somebody about what's wrong with you. But if they're still hanging in with you, the next thing that you could say to them, the next thing that they might solicit from you is, so what does this mean? How's it going to play out? What advantage of it is to you? And you can say with as many words as you feel like saying, I'm not sure that it will lead to anything, but I believe that I will feel good in the moment. And for me right now, that's enough. I've decided to stop trying and efforting to make something happen. I've decided to accept my worthiness and my blessedness. I've decided to accept that I stand in a place where good things are flowing to me. And I've decided that as hard as I've been trying, I haven't been letting enough of them in. And so I've decided to take a different approach. I've decided to just take maybe the easy way. I've decided to stop fussing about it and worrying about it and trying so hard. And I've decided to just give it all the fun and ease and laughter and lightheartedness that I can muster. That's my plan. That's what I took away from the gathering. And they'll say to you, are you ever going to go back to one of those meetings? And here's what we want you to say to them. I never have to go to another meeting because I've got it. So as we are moving forward in the hours that we are together, we are going to show you how to feel your way into the vortex. Esther said during her meditation over the last few days, I want to feel ease and flow. I want to feel ease and flow. And so just by focusing on the word ease, she began to feel ease. She didn't need a crystal ball that showed her some future event. And she didn't need to look into her physical reality, which is full of ease and not ease. She could feel it through an emotional tuning. And then she was breathing out and in, really focusing on her breath. And as she was breathing out, the word well-being flowed through her mind. And as she was breathing in, she thought ease and flow. And then she began playing a soft game where she breathed out with well-being and in with a word that started with A, that felt like an in the vortex word, appreciation. And then out, well-being, and in, basking, balance. Then out, well-being, and then in, clarity and confidence. And then out, well-being, and then in, delicious, decisive, and then out, well-being, and then in, ease and energy, and then out, well-being, and then in, free and fun, and then out, well-being. She got all the way to X and had to choose excellence.